Okay, yes, the meeting has started. For everyone who's joining us, thank you for joining us. So, Prof, the floor is yours.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Edmond Sanganyado. So today we just want to go a walkthrough on the state of the science, and the goal of this is so that we can be able to reimagine a sustainable future for our country through active and productive research. So I was going through the NDS2, which was developed from the NDS1, which came from the transition program 2017, NDS2 2018 there. Then NDS2 was kind of enacted in 2025 by the government. And there are 4 things that we need to be aware of in that NDS2 that are very relevant to us as researchers. Number 1, the government is committed to increase the budget for research and development to at least 1% of the GDP. So we're talking of a research and development budget of around 700 million, around 70 million. Then the government also promised that it's going to start a National Research Development and Innovation Fund. The goal of this fund is to kind of put more money on research areas that are considered priority. Then it also promised to establish what's called a National Policy Observatory. The purpose of this National Policy Observatory is to track performance of each of us, of all the researchers who are in Zimbabwe. They want to track our performances and determine who are the top ranking researchers. A similar program is already in use in countries like Spain. It's also in use in countries like South Africa. Then finally, the government has promised to start what are called research chair positions, and the goal of these researchers is so that our research can be more sustained, right? That we have got a sustained impact, not just a once-off thing. So this is what is coming from the NDS2, which is very relevant to us. So the purpose of today's talk is to look at where we are standing in meeting these 4 priorities that the government established. So to help us with that, there are 4 things that are that we need to understand when we are looking at all this. We need to start asking ourselves, what is our present capacity as researchers in Zimbabwe? What is the present capacity? We're looking at R&D expenditure. We're looking at number of researchers per capita. We're also looking at the infrastructure. Then secondly, we want to look at the productivity or activity, research activity that is taking place in the country right now. So we'll be looking at the number of publications and patents that have been granted, and also we now need to evaluate that activity, and to do that, we'll be looking at the research quality. So from research quality, we're looking at citation counts, publication, top-tier journals, and the like. Then usefulness of the research. How useful is that research? So for that, we look at commercialization and how technology transfer is being done, and also how startups are. How many startups are being started in the country. So this is kind of the framework that we'll be using in our discussion today to see where we stand as a country. Now, first thing that we need to understand is research takes money, research needs an investment. So one thing that we want to notice here is from the figure that I've given you, right? Our capacity as a country is limited. The last reported contribution to research and development was 0.2. And if you look at 0.2, you'll notice between 2015 and 2023, we are actually below the average for Southern Africa. Zimbabwe is our investment in research and development, it's actually underperforming when we are looking at Southern Africa as a benchmark. However, the 1% goal really mainly is northern African countries which have met that goal, and a particular country that you need to take note of is it's Senegal. They are actually exceeding, one of the few countries in Africa which are exceeding the 1% GDP. Now, who is funding our research in Zimbabwe? If I used Saival to determine the top 15 funders, and here are the results. There is not a single Zimbabwean research funding organization that funded research in the top 15, was ranked among the top 15 in all the publications that we did as a country. So now, what about our research capacity? Do we have the foot on ground? Do we have the soldiers, so to speak, to engage in this research? Most of us, we are coming from that closed system where most of the people we know are researchers. So it creates that illusion that there are so many researchers, Zimbabwean researchers, who are actually working in Zimbabwe right now. And the reality from the most recent statistics is we have 95 researchers per million inhabitants. The whole of Zimbabwe, there are only 95 researchers per million inhabitants. And that is kind of the average for sub-Saharan Africa, which is actually a magnitude lower than when compared to Central Asia, right? Central and Southern Asia. And the target in most countries is to reach around 1,200 researchers per million inhabitants. Countries, especially in Egypt, Algeria, Morocco, they actually reached that 1,200 researchers per million inhabitants, and we are 2 orders of magnitude below that. Now, what about our research productivity? Between 2020 and 2026, the whole of Zimbabwe, the affiliations based in Zimbabwe, we produced around almost 11,000 publications, and the number of publications has been steadily increasing from 2020 to 2025. That steady increase, it's meant I'll show you where those numbers are really coming from shortly. Now, if we compare to other sub-Saharan Africa, it will put us in the top 5. But I want you to take note really what top 5 means here. South Africa is producing around 220,000, Tanzania 20,000 only, and Zimbabwe, like I said, around 11,000. So we are actually a fraction of the productivity that is being produced in South Africa. And if we're a university in South Africa, Zimbabwe will be producing as much as Rhodes and even lower than universities like Pretoria, University of Pretoria or University of Johannesburg. So what exactly are we publishing? So the good news I'll give is 63% of our output is actually original research. What it actually means is it's Zimbabweans who are actually doing their research, maybe sending out surveys, going into labs, going into the field and conducting the research. So 63% of our publications are actually that. But the rest are really secondary publications. They come in the shapes of book chapters, reviews, books, letters, editorials, notes, and such. So you've noticed that it's only coming from secondary research. Now, what do we mean by secondary research? Secondary research is mainly synthesis of work that has already been done. And this is kind of a reflection. When there is limited research funding, people tend to go to secondary publication. If they don't have the money to do original research, they'll just synthesize ideas that others have already come up with. What is of note, the good news really is between 2020 and 2025, there were only 3 retractions from researchers in Zimbabwe, only 3, which is very impressive in one end. The reason I'm saying it's impressive is because in most countries where they publish a lot, give an example of Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the like, Ethiopia as well, you'll find they will have more than 1,000 retractions. Retractions, what it essentially means is a paper has been found that wanting, so to speak, after publication. They found that there might be challenges in the process of the publication process, or the quality, or what is claimed doesn't really agree with what they wrote. One of the retractions that caught my eye was from Scientific African, where the paper was retracted because it was plagiarism. So that is kind of, I'll consider, this is probably one of the first instances where a Zimbabwean research has been retracted because of unethical practices. So we just need to keep that in mind. Then when it comes to patents, our output is dropping, dropped by 61%, and we are ranked at 109 around the world with patent application. Again, that follows when we only have 0.2% committed to research and development. We don't expect much patents coming. Quality of publications, you'll notice for there's the term called field weighted citation impact, where the number, when the value of the field weighted citation is more than 1, it suggests that the researcher is being cited more times than an average paper in that particular domain. So ours is 1.19, which is also lower than the SADC average. Which is 1.22. Citations per publication, again, ours is lower than the SADC average. Now, I then used what's called Nature Index. Nature Index, these are a collection of journals. They are kind of the top of the cream, around 135 journals, which are from all different fields, which are considered to be really high quality journals. So publishing in that particular setup, right, it kind of speaks of the quality of the work that we are publishing as a country. So I looked at the numbers, and globally, Zimbabwe is ranked number 88 on research output in 2025, which was in those Nature Index journals. And in Africa, we are ranked number 14. Right. Then by position by subject area, in biological sciences, we are 21 in Africa. Environmental sciences, we are 23 in Africa. And health sciences, that's where we top, where we are number 9 in Africa. Now, one thing that we need to understand about that before we kind of celebrate all those numbers, right? When I looked, there are around 38 only publications in Nature Index journals by Zimbabwean with a Zimbabwean affiliation, and of those 38, only 3 were published by a Zimbabwean or someone based in Zimbabwe as a corresponding author or first author. There were only 3 out of 38. The rest came from collaborative work in those big consortium research. And of those 3, most of them, they were based they were all based at the University of Zimbabwe. Now, this diagram kind of gives a picture to what I've just said, that most of the share of our share in those nature of indexes are really low. Now, when we compare ourselves now to South Africa and Tanzania, since we are number 3 on Nature Index in those top 3, right, you will notice we kind of lag really 2 orders of magnitude lower than South Africa. So what's the ranking now, overall ranking in research quality in Africa? Zimbabwe is kind of ranked number 14, below countries that are actually in war, like Sudan, below Uganda, below Ghana, below Algeria, Ethiopia, Nigeria, South Africa, Egypt. We are right at number 14 and only above Rwanda, which is really interesting. Now, all this, right, means that we now need to see how it fits in the usefulness of our research. With usefulness of our research, we want to look at how we rank now in the Global Innovation Index, which is a metric that is used to determine how research is being translated into feasible products and feasible processes that people are actually using in the country, right? So you'll notice for Zimbabwe, we are actually ranked number 129 out of 139. Right. Then when it comes to countries which are in the low middle income bracket, right, Zimbabwe is ranked number 31 out of 37. In Africa, we are number 24 out of 32. So all this, as you can see that correlation between research investment, what is put in for research to happen, the research activity, what we do to produce research, and now the research quality right? How people are recognizing the research that is coming from the country, and now the usefulness of the research. That it kind of end up becoming this vicious cycle that when there is little investment in research capacity, there will be compromised research activity. Right. I'm using the word compromise because there will be a lot of research scholarly output, but when you look at it, you'll notice most of the scholarly output is not original research. It's just synthesis of what others have done, right? Now, from that synthesis, right, it kind of feeds into the quality again, that you might have high citation count, but if it is coming from reviews and not original research, it contributes little to the usefulness of the research that is going to come out. So, looking at the projection from from the NDS2 that the government came up with, you will see now that the government committed that in 2026, they are going to increase research funding to 0.5. So we are now in April. We haven't yet calls from Research Council of Zimbabwe about those 0.5. That should be around 70 million US dollars, which needs to be dispersed for research funding. So that's where our voices researchers now need to make those contributions and promises a reality. Then the personnel, there's a promise to increase from that 95 to 355. So we now need to think strategies of how we can increase from 95 to 355. Those who can do the calculations, we are saying 355 per million researchers. That means we are going to say 355 times 13. How can we increase our number from around 1,000 researchers to around 6,000 researchers in 2026 alone? So this is all from my presentation. I'll relinquish my time to the chair lady to help us with the next part of this conversation when we'll delve into the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. So I'm trying to see if I can enable the cameras and mics for all the people who have joined. So if your camera is on, please try and switch on your camera if it is on now to see if I managed to actually turn. Okay, so I can hear someone speaking. So it means that your mics and your cameras are on now. They're now active, right?
Yes,
okay,
they are now
active. Thank you so much. Okay, so thank you, Prof. So this was quite an interesting discussion, actually. I'm amazed by all the data that you managed to scavenge online. So I think one thing that someone was actually going to ask, I think when you're talking about research from Zimbabwe, is that I remember we discussed this once in the groups, and it was actually mentioned that most of the research that is attributed to South Africa is actually coming from Zimbabwean researchers, right? So how do we correct this test? Do we correct for this in the statistics to say that Zimbabwean researcher input to publications in Africa, or generally we say as long as it is funded by South African university, it belongs to South Africa, despite the fact that it was done by a Zimbabwean researcher?
Thank you so much for that comment. It's one of those things that we need to be aware of the difference between being a Zimbabwean researcher and Zimbabwean research. Those are totally two different things. Zimbabwean research is research that has been conducted and funded in Zimbabwe.
Personal assistance.
Sorry, there's someone with their mic on. Maybe switch it off until you get the chance to actually say something so that we don't disturb the discussion. Thank you. Yes, you can go ahead, Prof.
So the research that has been conducted by Zimbabweans in South Africa belongs to South Africa because it was funded by the National Research Foundation of South Africa. So we cannot claim that research in any way.
Okay, so okay.
Hello.
So
Hello,
Samson, you want to say something? Yes.
Yes. So to start with, thanks, Prof, for the wonderful presentation. I hope this is something that we can have access to, or as something that you can also publish, or something that we can cite when we are also writing about these things ourselves, one. Then two, are we saying that, Prof, since you're in Canada, all the research you're doing is Canadian, it's not Zimbabwean? That's two. Then three, I don't want to agree with you that publication that synthesize empirical studies or secondary research is not up there in terms of quality. I've seen quality studies that synthesize empirical research, that is secondary research. And I'm saying this as someone who has just published synthesis this year, and I'm very proud of that. So I'm a bit biased.
You should be. You should be.
For that.
Yeah,
so,
you should be proud of it. So my point is, right, I'll give an example in health, right? In health, they have secondary studies, which are systematic reviews, right? Or meta-analysis. Those systematic reviews and meta-analysis, they actually contribute in the pipeline of the production of drugs and maybe health interventions. They contribute to the innovation pipeline, but that is not the reality in most fields. So my comment, I'm sorry about that, it was a generalization across fields. There are exceptions. The exception really that I can think of right now, it's in health. Right. I'm in environmental sciences. I can write a synthesis right now of original research that have been done by other people. Its contribution to the innovation pipeline is limited. Right. You are trying to give me credit of work that has been done by others. So it's the one who came up with the idea of using, say, clay, heating clay, then using it as a filter, right, is the one who gets the credit for that development of the product, not me, who just talked about how many people have been doing that. So that was kind of my comment that, yes, synthesis can be useful in the innovation pipeline in particular settings, but not all.
Okay. So if you're interested in saying something, please raise your hand and then you can choose you, then you can speak. So Samson, yes, you can go ahead and comment. Everyone else, you can show by raising your hand on the top of your the screen. Yes.
I had three comments. One on whether we can get this something that we can also cite. In fact, I have not seen something that is of such a quality talking about, you say that is coming from Zimbabwe. I thank you, Prof, for this, but I'm asking whether we something that you can lay our hands on and something that you can make use of in future. That's one. Then secondly, I wanted to ask you whether whatever research you're doing yourself, since you're based in Canada, do we say that your research is Canadian and not Zimbabwean? Maybe the third party. Last year I met someone from Sweden. They employ someone just to do even meta-analysis for the government. And I don't think we can get that in Zimbabwe. And looking at such things is very painful. Maybe in conclusion, maybe there's a need for a lot of effort to reach out to policymakers so that they can consider these things, these findings that you are giving whenever they are planning. Thanks.
Oh, thank you so much, Samson. I'll just clarify. I see Edmond is here. Edmond does research in Africa, a lot of research, right? But he's doing his research here in Canada, right? And the one who is funding the research is the Canadian government and other agencies in Canada. Because they are funding it, they own it, right? The research is the Zimbabwean context, the Zimbabwean African context and all the like, and we can say it's contributing to our understanding of Zimbabwe and Africa. But we can't claim ownership of that research because we are not the ones who are funding it. With funding it, what does it mean? It means Research Council of Zimbabwe identified a research area and said, this is important in our context as Zimbabwe, and we are going to put money for that, right? That means they've taken ownership of it. So with the absence of that, that's where we get metrics like the ones that we're getting here, right? They might appear disappointing, but I don't want us to feel disappointed. I want us to celebrate because with the little that we had, this is much we produced. So it's something which is really celebratory in nature, but we cannot continue in that trajectory if we want to meet the promises that have been made by the NDS2, right? If we really want these promises to be a reality, we can't continue in that trajectory. So that was the point. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. So the next person with a question or a comment is Blessing. Blessing Master C, may you please open your mic?
Okay, yeah, thanks so much. I guess he kind of answered my question, right? Because I wanted to know, like, if you collaborate, say, like you're abroad, right? You're in the diaspora, but then you collaborate with a Zimbabwean institution. Whatever I'm producing, doesn't it count for, for Zimbabwe as well? So that was my question.
Thank you. It counts if you're collaborating with the Zimbabwean because what it means is in that collaboration, right, they are actually contributing. It's termed in kind, not in funding. In dollar amounts, it's an in-kind contribution. So we say that they are contributing. But again, remember, they are contributing at personal level, right? Their affiliation is just permitting them to do that, and it's not coming from the funder, right? It's an in-kind contribution by you, right? So how much is it going to contribute to the innovation pipeline of the country if there is no direct investment from the one who wants to benefit from the contribution? So thank you so much for that. I agree with you that our collaborations, they matter, they contribute to that innovation pipeline. Right.
I think it's an interesting point that you bring up, Professor. Like, if we're collaborating, are we benefiting or someone else is benefiting from the data they're collecting from Zimbabwe? But anyway, next question is Edmond. Please open your mic.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Prof, for the very good presentation. I think I just want to start by reflecting on what you said, which is very true. I'm based at the University of Alberta. I'm an assistant professor there, or assistant professor of human geography. And one of the things, my PhD was also funded by the Canadian government and the International Development Research Center, which is also a federal agency. And one of the things that I encountered, even when I was applying for PhD funding, I had to justify strongly why this research is important to the Canadian government, and I had to link with their international development priorities, their focus on gender and so forth. And I've just applied also in February, waiting for the outcome for another federal grant. And I had to justify, because my research is in Africa, it's in Zimbabwe, I'm focusing on Harare and Bulawayo. I had to explain and connect it to the Canada-Africa strategy and so forth. So some of these things, like you rightly said, Prof, some of these funding agencies, they want to, to demonstrate why we should fund your research, because it's funded by the Canadian taxpayer. They have to be strong justification. Why is this research important to Canada? And sometimes we don't have control over some of those things, because they may, reviewers may say, oh, why is this research important to Canada and why should it be supported? Then my second point is around, I think sometimes we once said this and discussed it within the group around collaborations. How can we strengthen collaboration between Zimbabwean-based researchers and those who are based elsewhere? It could be in North America or Europe, because the reason why I'm saying so is that people back home, they may face, scholars back home, they may face challenges with funding and so forth. But some of them are really doing and trying and doing really good research and good work. So how can we complement each other, at least so that at least our research productivity could be, we try to, as a way of capacity building, but as a two-way process, not just you are just extracting or trying to get data from people on the ground, but also try to build these equitable collaborations with our colleagues. If we are fortunate enough to have funding, then and one of the biggest challenges also with funding is that, for example, if I'm collaborating with someone in Zimbabwe, the Canadian government doesn't allow that person. The rule is that a collaborator cannot have access to the funds unless they're doing something. Maybe you can say, oh, they're the ones who are going to collect the data, and then maybe they can have access to the funds. So those are some of the dynamics. So those are the things that I wanted just to reflect on and kind of share and ask questions about the way forward.
Thank you so much. I totally agree with the collaboration, because you remember what we're talking about, that we need ownership of the research. So this is one way really that I have received funding from the Canadian government, but Zimbabwe can take ownership of that research. And it is that back door, so to speak, is those collaborations where you are going to contribute in kind and to this research, and it becomes a win-win. And over to Punet.
Okay, so thank you. So before you switch off your camera, Elmond, I just want people to realize that. So we've got Edmond, then we've got Elmond. Just in case you confuse the two, and they're both in Canada. So these are the two different people. Okay, so Elmond is going to be the next presenter by the end of the month. So yes, you are not going to repeat the presenter. It's not Edmond presenting again. It will be Elmond. Okay, so the next person to ask a question or to contribute is the forensic criminologist. May you please open your mic?
Hi, thank you for that presentation, Professor. So my name is actually Chico, and I'm both a forensic scientist and a criminologist, right? And from what I could pick up on the whole presentation, which was brilliant, is mainly the fact that there's not enough for sort of each person to do their own research and, to fly as high as they want individually. So do you not think that it would also help if researchers in Zimbabwe sort of collaborated first together so that it's easier to have one voice? So for example, I'm a forensic scientist and I'm currently working on looking at food safety. So that's looking at how people grow plants. Is it safe? Are they using the correct pesticides, etc.? Why not collaborate with people doing the same thing? And then once we've built that rapport and we've gotten people looking at us and thinking, okay, there's good research in this sector and that sector, and then people can branch out. Because I feel like since there's already less to go around for everybody, if we each have our own project, it becomes messy, doesn't it? And then it just seems like we're all confused because it's 1,000 people fighting for funding that can only fit 2 people. So I don't know how you feel about that, but wouldn't it be better to first collaborate as Zimbabweans, and then that makes more sense than to have one person sort of trying to find funding and the next person trying to find funding, and then it's just a lot. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Chico, for that one. It's there is a term that we use for that. It's called a snowball effect, right? With snowball effect is where a small group of people, they gather together and attack one problem. And the more they attack it, they kind of continue growing and growing and growing. So that's one of the best strategies that we can actually use as Zimbabwean researchers, that we can gather together in our small spaces and actually kind of pull together our ideas and work in that regard. So yes, I think that is the best way. And we have come up with an idea, and we are now calling, or we have an open call for people who have succeeded in applying for grants. Contact the admin, Zimbabwe Research Network admins. If you have been successful in that, and you can commit 4 hours per week to work with people who want to apply for grants, please reach out to us, and so that we can create that snowball effect.
Okay, thank you, Professor. Just to remind you, this is a very important call because we have an issue where most researchers actually want expertise or guidance on grants. So please hit Prof's call for the grant call if you have experience in applying for grants, local grants, international grants, and collaboration grants. We would like you to contact us so that we can form working groups and you can actually mentor other juniors or other people trying to apply for similar grants that you applied for. So thank you. So the next person to ask or to comment is Charles Teta.
Okay, yeah. Thank you so much, Prof, for the very insightful presentation. I think the the first thing that I raised my hand. Oh, okay, sorry, I had a bit of a network glitch there. I wanted, so the first thing I wanted to, I raised my hand for was a comment on one of the presenters who, in fact, I think it was you, who said that where funding is coming from is where the credit goes to in terms of your research, where it belongs. But I also wanted to add more to that sometimes it's not that direct, or it's not that straightforward. You can get a funding from an international funder, but you are in Zimbabwe. So it's more of your affiliation than your source of funding, but your affiliation. So you can be in Zimbabwe and get maybe grant from CEDA or from UKRI or somewhere. But if you're affiliated to UZ or some other organization in Zimbabwe, then your research then belongs to Zimbabwe. So I just wanted to clarify that, and yeah, add another aspect to it rather. Yeah, and then the second one, it's more of a suggestion. I don't know if we have more people who can influence policymakers in this group, but for resource-constrained countries like Zimbabwe, we know that research is not going, is not well funded. We have a lot of resource constraints, especially in the sciences, engineering. Maybe how about building some sort of like shared labs? Like it doesn't belong to anyone. It doesn't belong to NAST, to UZ, to Chinhoyi University. It's a central lab. People go there. They can pay a little bit of money just to maintain the infrastructure, or even nothing. Maybe the state can be funding all that, the maintenance of that. Because a lot of science equipment is very expensive just to maintain, to run it. So if you can have like shared labs where people who are analyzing certain stuff just go there with their samples, analyze, come back, and start writing up with the research. Is that not a more feasible approach to look at it? And we can improve our publications. Like we can work, yeah. So that's more of a suggestion in terms of policy, but I don't know if any of us have got that much influence, or they can take it further. It's just a suggestion. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So on that one, really, with this one, I think it was more of the presentation. It's kind of for us to see where we are so that we can be able to come up with strict recommendations to allude to what Samson mentioned, that we need this to be citable, right? So as you can see with the figures that I've given, that to write it down, it takes a lot. So if you are really interested in writing this down, helping me craft it into a proper report that we can submit to, I know we have connections with Simche, so it's easy to work with them. So if you are interested, please reach out, then we get started.
Okay. So thank you,
All right,
Prof.
thanks,
So,
Prof. Yeah, I'll definitely do that.
Charles, I actually like your suggestion, the second suggestion. I even thought about it at one time, like we can have like a core lab facility or a central lab facility, you know. It's because like you mentioned, we've got a problem and a shortage of equipment, and sometimes it's difficult or expensive for one university to buy this equipment. But if the equipment is shared, it will actually be beneficial to everyone. So I know that when I was still at University of Technology and we were starting the biological science department, we didn't really have a lot of equipment. So most of the times we would collaborate with the University of Zimbabwe. We'll just call the department at the University of Zimbabwe, and then would say, okay, we know that you've got this machine and this machine. Can you come and use it? And then everything will be done in a professional and legal way, university to university, right? And I'll just take the students for that experiment to the University of Zimbabwe. But unfortunately, as well, at the moment, we cannot say that University of Zimbabwe has got high-end machines. So I think Charles is a very good suggestion. Maybe it can actually fit into Prof's idea of startups. You know, like it can be a government-funded startup. So Charles, if you feel very motivated, or if you've got a team of people who are very motivated, maybe you can draft something together, you know, and then you can pitch it to the government, and I'm sure they'll be open to it. So anyway, so
thank you so much for the
Okay.
positive comments to my idea. Yeah, I think the whole idea is to try and make research in Zimbabwe like lower the costs because I know, especially in the sciences, I've been there. I did my PhD in Zimbabwe. Of course, I'm no longer in Zimbabwe. I'm now in the UK, but I know the costs of running, buying equipment, having it commissioned, having a technician who is paid, having a monthly salary to run that and to maintain it. There are so many like maintenance plans around those. So if we can have like something that's shared, then you're having one technician running the whole of Zimbabwe, and it can be somewhere where it's cheaper to accommodate researchers. They can come, stay there for a couple of days, have their samples analyzed, or they can analyze themselves, but whatever. But or use the technician who is employed. But as long as we have like a central lab, it definitely cuts down the costs. Yeah. And we can have more output from that. So we don't then need so much money to just have one publication. You now have some of these costs cut down. Yeah. That's a great idea. And thanks so much for the idea. Yeah, I'll think about it, about the startup.
Okay, so thank you. So we have about 10 minutes remaining, and I've got 3 people with their hands up. So each person is coming. May you please make your contribution or your comment as short as possible so that all of us can discuss something. So the next person is Mwanza Patrick. Please unmute your mic.
Thank you, Prof, for the wonderful presentation. Really enjoyed that, just to see what the picture looks like in the country. Just a few comments. I absolutely agree with the last speaker about having these sort of central places where people can collaborate and nobody really owns it, but you can have center directors and what have you. I think that's an awesome suggestion that probably should be taken further. But I also wanted to add that when you were speaking, I thought about the word impact. I think you were talking about innovation, and that has to go through what impact is your research making. So, for example, just the figures that you've mentioned here can go a long way in making impact in terms of policy, having some policy changes, and perhaps we need some people within our network who can get as close as possible where those decisions are being made, to also facilitate the process. So yes, there was money that was promised to come. When is it coming? And is it actually enough? Where we consulted when this budget was being drawn up and they said 70 million and what have you, you actually need to consult with the people that are doing the research, or at least their representatives. Then I was also thinking about our actual institutions. So, do they have research offices? So offices that are looking at how is the research being managed, what kind of grants coming through the institutions, and who's training the researchers, whether it's on grant writing, all of those type of things. So we can't just go to the national if even in our local institutions, everybody's just doing whatever they can. They hear as hearsay, oh, there's this particular call that's coming up, and they go and they get it, but they're working in little silos. Whereas if each university has some type of research office that is solely there to make sure that research is well funded, is done ethically, so they would be also in charge of all the ethics and all of the things that you mentioned. I think that would be a great idea. Then the last thing I wanted to mention here, I guess if there are colleagues that are also part of the universities in the country, one of the initiatives that is currently going on is the Africa-Australia University Network. I'm not sure how the universities join, but you can literally apply as a university to have your university part of that. And one of the things they are promoting is grants for early career researchers. And it gives you an opportunity to collaborate with universities in Australia as well as here in Africa, which is a wonderful opportunity. So maybe some colleagues can take it back to the institutions to see if they can apply to be part of those type of initiatives as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Prof, you have a contribution, or we move on to the next person?
Yeah, I think he covered it all well,
Okay.
starting from individual to institute to the national. And just my comment there is, will you be willing for us to write this state of science report so that we can be able to send it to the policymakers?
It's really interesting. Okay, so I see Blessing, you were next, but may I please keep you and go to Solomon, because Blessing had commented earlier, then we can come back to you. So Solomon, can you unmute your mic, then you can come back to Blessing.
Thank you very much for the space, and thank you very much, Prof, for the talk. It was very interesting and rich. Yeah, you talked about research contributions best as something that is best in terms of affiliation as well as maybe sponsorship. But we also need to maybe understand that there are some researchers who do their publications and their research work as independent. Where do their contributions go? Can they be, for example, let me say I'm doing my work as an independent researcher. Can my research be regarded as a contribution to the Zimbabwean landscape, or it can be a personal contribution without any national affiliation? That's my question. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for that. So when you are submitting a research output as an independent researcher, you have to state the country. So that's how the country gets the credit. So whenever you are submitting as an independent researcher, you determine the country which that research is going to be associated with.
So which means that the data then is collected when you're looking at all data publications from Zimbabwe, you also include the ones who are independent publishers, not under an institution. Okay. Okay, thank you. So the last comment will be Blessing before we end the meeting today. Yes, Blessing.
Yeah, mine is it's a quick question, right? I know Edmond, you're in Canada. You guys are so some of the funding, they come from government departments, right, or kind of ministries. So I wanted to ask, like for Zimbabwe, for instance, do our government ministries or departments, do they get funding that is channeled for research or no?
When I was looking at Zimbabwean policy, the last time I noticed that happening was in 2012. That's when there was money, I think it was 0.3% was set aside by the So a little bit about this so that we get an understanding of how it works in Zimbabwe. So in Zimbabwe, unlike in South Africa, where the budget specifies directly that we are going to distribute this much to, say, to the National Research Foundation, in Zimbabwe, we don't do that. What we do in Zimbabwe is we say the money that is going to be allocated for research goes to the Ministry of Finance. And the Ministry of Finance is the one that is going to determine how much is going to Tobacco Research Board, how much is going to go to TMB, how much is going to go to cotton research, how much is going to go to agriculture research, how much is going to go to Zimbabwe Research Council, right? So it's the Ministry of Finance that makes that decision, and the money is allocated to the Ministry of Finance, right? Not to the not even to the Ministry of Science and Technology. Now, the Ministry of Science and Technology, after it has received its allocation, it then comes up and say, oh, we want to support these particular research priority areas, right? Then they give money to Research Council of Zimbabwe, right? And that has not been going on for the past 5 years. It was more ad hoc, where the Minister of Science and Technology then says, oh, we're going to set aside $50,000 for research, right? Then it goes to Research Council of Zimbabwe. Then Research Council of Zimbabwe makes an open call, and those open calls, they are sent to research offices across the universities in Zimbabwe. It's rare to get a public open call on their website, which is kind of maintained as a database. Those are some of the challenges that they face. So Ministry of government departments like POTRAS, after POTRAS received money from their specific Ministry of Information, right, they had their own open call and say, oh, we want to train masters and PhD students, so you can apply. So it's not really structured in a way that we have a coordinated mechanism for funding research. We don't have a coordinated mechanism for funding research right now. So that's where Patrick's comment comes in, that coordination, where the promise of 1% without coordination mechanism of the funding, it's definitely, it might end up being just a promise and not a reality. So thank you for that. I hand over to Brunette.
Okay, thank you. So can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I know that from the first episode, we said Edmond will present next, and then unfortunately you saw Edmond, which is interesting as well. So Edmond is still to present. Edmond is still the next presenter. So Edmond will be presenting at the end of the month. And I know that from the questionnaires, we sent you questions if you're interested to present. We've got the data. We are not ignoring you. We've got the data. We are going to approach you one by one, seeing how everything is going. So for now, we asked Prof. Edmond to present because we're interested to introduce the grant call, because from the first episode, everyone was talking about grants. So we wanted to set this up from the beginning of the year, and depending on the part of the year and how important or priority it is, we can come in with more webinars or presentations that are tailored to accommodate many people or to get into touch with many people. For example, when scholarship season is coming, we might get someone to talk about scholarships. So now this is a call to everyone. If you're very good in scholarships, please contact me, and then I schedule you in so that people are ready for the scholarship season for Europe and for America, which comes around September to February of the next year. So if you're very good in scholarships, application of scholarships, different scholarships, be it masters, PhD, and maybe postdocs, right? Please contact me, and then we can arrange a session for you. So Edmond will be presenting next, and we can't wait for your session. I'm sure that will be very enlightening. And we have reached the end of the meeting today. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate you. Please come again next time, and you can even suggest the next session that you might think is more priority and you want us to address earlier. Thank you so much. Have a good evening and have a good weekend. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
So thank you, Prof.
All right. Thanks for the opportunity.